Hello, and welcome to the Wade Borth Podcast. I'm your host, Wade Borth, and in every episode, my goal is to get you to think differently about how money works and ultimately to empower you to take control of your money and your personal financing system. Hello, and welcome back to the Wade Borth Podcast. Today, I got a special guest with us. He is Mark Podolsky. Did I pronounce your name correctly, Mark?
You got it.
Perfect. I just always want to make sure I get the one with a lot of vowels correct, or a lot of consonants correct. Mark is considered the Land Geek, and he's got a book called Dirt Rich. And Mark is widely considered to be the country's most trusted and foremost authority on buying and selling raw, undeveloped land. And like I was telling Mark earlier, I've talked to a lot of people that talk about passive income through the use of rental properties and or multifamilies, storage units, just a lot of different ideas. But I don't know that I've ever ran across anybody that is focusing as an expert on undeveloped land. And I know that's a marketplace. I just haven't ran across somebody that's got the kind of knowledge and expertise that Mark has. So I was so excited to have Mark have you on, because I think this is a great opportunity to at least open people's minds up, to have them think. And like Nelson says, that your imagination is what will generate your wealth, right? So those things that you find passion in and you find a desire to, but sometimes we just need that little spark to start growing that imagination. Again, welcome, Mark, and thank you for taking time to be on the podcast.
Wade, thank you so much. Delighted to be here.
So, did I miss anything in the intro? I probably missed a lot of your accolades, and I apologize for that, but there seems to be a lot there. But you've been doing this for quite a while.
Yeah, no, I've been doing this over 22 years now, and I've done over 6,000 transactions, and I absolutely love it.
When you say 6,000 transactions, that's 6,000 purchases of land. Is that how we look at that?
Correct.
Wow. That's over 20 years. That's a lot. So it's not, so you've seen a lot of stuff come and go, I would take.
I've seen it all. Yeah. Yeah.
So what got you into this? Why the raw land development? People have reasons for what they do. I have my story about why I got into IVC and why I do what I do. But what's your story? What got you down that pathway?
So if we rewind the tape, 22 years, I was a miserable, micromanaged 45-minute commute to work and back investment banker, specializing in mergers and acquisitions with private equity groups. And Wade, it got so bad for me, I wouldn't get the Sunday blues, anticipating Monday coming around. I'd get the Friday blues, anticipating the weekend going by really fast and having to be back at work on Monday. So my firm hires this guy, and he's telling me that as a side hustle, he's flipping raw land, and he's buying raw land, pennies on the dollar, he's flipping it, and he's making a 300% return on his investment. And Wade, I'm looking at companies all day long. Has 15% EBITDA margins or free cash flow. Average companies, 10%. And I'm looking at companies all day long, less than 10%. So of course, I don't believe him. And I've got $3,000 saved up for car repairs. I go to New Mexico with him to a tax deed auction. I do exactly what he tells me to do. I buy up 10 half-acre parcels at an average of $300 each. I flip them online, and they all sell for an average of $1,200 each. It worked. So I took another auction in Arizona, which is where I live. And again, this is 2000. There's no one in the room. I'm buying up lots and acreage for like nothing. I sell all that property. I make over $90,000 on that one auction. So I go to my wife, and she's pregnant. I'm going to quit my job and become a full-time land investor. And she says, absolutely not. So I said, okay. So it took months for the land investing income to exceed the investment banking income. And then I quit, and I've been doing it full-time ever since. And I absolutely love it.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing when you go to your wife and she's pregnant, how the unknown is. You have a lot of unknown going on. And that's probably a lot of people's lives, right? We have unknowns. And so we have to balance the unknown to what we can gain, right? From what we could possibly lose. And I can understand that, but I know there's a lot of people that kind of look at buying or doing anything that's out of the ordinary to being scary. And so one of the things that I enjoy working with professionals like Mark or other people that are professionals in their marketplace is that's where you get the elite level coaching that can help you take you through those scary times. I think that's fair to say. Like you said, you've seen it all, or at least a lot of it. Right? I don't know about it all because who knows what's going to come, but you're able to help people walk through those uncertain times and address those issues because it's not something you haven't seen before.
Yeah, that's correct.
But, and I love you have one philosophy, happy customers guaranteed. I saw that and I highlighted it. I'm like, I want to talk to them about this because that's ultimately what we want all our clients to have is that happy customer or happy client guarantee. I got great relationships with my clients, but I always want them happy, and I would love to have that guarantee. So maybe let's talk about that a little bit. How'd you come up with that, or where does that come from?
It's golden rule it, right? How many times have we been involved in a business transaction and we had buyer's remorse?
Yeah.
And I thought, how do you get rid of that? Just guarantee they're going to be happy. And if they're not happy, refund them and just make it super easy. Remove all the risk. I'm human. My team's human. We're going to make mistakes. That is inevitable. But what the customer can experience is a complete happiness and joy, even when the transaction doesn't work out. Because when you're talking about raw land, and maybe there's a road isn't great, or there's something that's in your view that you don't love, whatever it is, I don't really care what it is. If they're not happy, either we're going to find something that does make them happy, or we'll just refund them. So it just makes the transaction so much simpler. And we're playing the long game, because I don't think that any of my customers is my customer. I'm looking at them as an entire network. So that's not the person I'm dealing with. I'm dealing with them, their entire Facebook community, their entire Twitter community or Instagram community, their friends, their family. It's just exponential. So I want to make that whole community as happy as possible so that they're 100% confident that they can continue working with us and referring us and growing.
Gotcha. So maybe I have a tendency to do this. I probably know I did this. I probably jumped the gun a little bit. I got right into wanting to know the relationship between you and your customers. Maybe you own a company called Frontier Equity Properties, and that's your company that you do the transactions through. Tell me what a client would gain by working with you. I think sometimes I take the knowledge I have and I step in. I don't start at point A. I stop in point D or F and they take it from there. So maybe I should back up a little bit and say, what is it you do, and how can that be of service to anybody that's listening to this podcast?
Well, if you're listening to the podcast and you have IBC money you want to deploy, I'd actually change the question up. And I would say, why would somebody want to make raw land cash flow? Or how can we make raw land cash flow? So Wade, I'll use you as a case study. So Where do you live?
I live in North Dakota.
Okay, so I'm going to assume that you have 5 acres of raw land in Arizona, which is where I live, and you owe $200 in back taxes. So you're advertising 2 important things to me. Number one, you have no emotional attachment to the raw land. You're in North Dakota, the property's in Arizona. And number two, you're distressed financially in some weird way, because we don't pay for things like our property taxes. We don't value them in the same way. As a result, the county treasurer keeps sending you notices saying, Wade, if you don't pay your property taxes, you're going to lose that parcel to a tax deed or a tax lien investor. So all I'm going to do is look at the comparable sales on your 5-acre parcel for the last 12 to 18 months. I'm going to take the lowest comparable sale. Let's say it's $10,000. And I'm going to divide by 4. And that's going to give me what Warren Buffett would call a 300% margin of safety. So I'm going to send you an actual offer of $2,500 for your 5-acre parcel. Now you accept it. Why? Because for you, $2,500 is better than nothing. Now in reality, 3 to 5% of people will accept your quote unquote top dollar offer. But now that you've accepted it, I'm going to go through due diligence or in-depth research. I have to confirm you still own the property. I have to confirm that back taxes are only $200. I have to make sure there's been no breaks in the chain of title, no liens or encumbrances. And so I'm going to outsource my team in the Philippines for $11. They're connected to an American title company, and they'll do my title work. They'll also get me the plat maps, the aerial maps, the GIS maps, everything that I need as doing my research. And if it's $5,000 or more, I'll just go traditionally through an American title company. I won't even take any title risk at all. But this is only $2,500. Do that. Let's say everything checks out, and then sell your property, Wade, in 30 days or less, and make a cash flow like a rental home. So I have a built-in best buyer. Do you know who it is?
Who?
The neighbors. So I'm going to send out neighbor letters saying, hey, here's your opportunity. Protect your privacy, protect your views, know your neighbor. So oftentimes the neighbors will buy it. Now, if they pass, I'll go to my buyer's list. The buyer's list passes, I'll go to a little website you may have heard of. It's called Craigslist. It's the 15th most trafficked website in the United States. I'll go to one that I know you've heard of called Meta. or Facebook, buy sell groups in the marketplace. And then I'm going to go to the lands, landmoto.com, landsofamerica.com, landandfarm.com, landflip.com, landhub.com. These are platforms where people buy and sell raw land. But the way that I'm going to sell it is where the magic is. I'm going to make it irresistible for that next buyer. So all I'm going to ask for is a $2,500 down payment to own that 5-acre parcel. And then I'll make it a car payment. That's $297 a month for the next 84 months. So it's a one-time sale. I get my capital out on the down payment 6 to 10 months out. And then I'm getting $297 a month for the next 84 months. But Wade, no renters, no rehabs, no renovations, no rodents. And because I'm not dealing with a tenant, I'm exempt from Dodd-Frank, RESPA, and the SAFE Act, all this onerous real estate legislation. So the game that we play is, can we create enough passive income where with these land notes, where it exceeds our fixed expenses, and now we're working because we want to, not because we have to.
So let me just stop you there. So what I heard you say is that you go and you figure out what the price is, you make an offer, if you're able to buy it, then you turn around and find somebody to sell it. You get your money back out of it that you put into it, your purchase price, and the rest of the next, would you say 84 months? Is that the...
Yeah. It depends on
whatever it is. That's your cash flow, right?
That's our cash flow.
Okay. So now I take that and I say, okay, I have my clients that have built up their warehouse of money and ready to deploy it, find ways to grow a passive income. So they come to you, and do you plug them into that system? Is that how that works?
So yeah, they can either do that, or we can. There's a do it yourself, there's a done with you, or a done for you program. That
Like
depending
done for
on,
me.
yeah, exactly. They can do that, absolutely.
So when you say you work in all three spaces, where you educate people, or you work with them, or you do it for them, where do you guys fit in there?
Yeah, so that's exactly what we do. So if they go to thelandgeek.com, they can learn what those paths.
And that's the landgeek.com, right? Gotcha. Okay. So what do you see as your biggest hurdle with clients or people that are investing? Because again, I your side of the business when it comes to the purchase. And again, I always say, if you want to make real changes in life, you hire elite level coaching, and can put you in that space. I haven't worked with you yet, Mark, but from what I've read and from our discussions, somebody that knows their business is a partner that I want, because I don't want to learn your business. I just want to say, hey, we got capital and you got knowledge, let's put them together and we can all prosper. That's my whole idea. That's how I approach things. I know some people do it themselves and they want to learn it. I just don't have time to learn it because I'm doing what I do best and what's my individual passion. So,
yeah, absolutely.
So they go to landgeek.com. They can learn about what fits for them, right? Do they want to learn it? Do they want to do it with you, or do they want you to do it for them? What do you see as primary characteristics of when this works really well? What do you see as characteristics in your people that are bringing you capital? And let me put that in reference for you. When I'm talking to my clients, I said, in order to make the whole IBC idea work, it takes time, because again, this is a long-term objective. It takes money because, again, if you put pennies in, you're going to have pennies to work with. So it's pennies out type of thing. But if you truly want to run your banking business or your financing business in your life, it really should be an all-in type of an approach. So it takes time, money. But the thing that I see is the biggest hurdle is the discipline to say, I put my money to work and now I have to have a plan to pay it back. And it goes back to the whole idea that we have to love ourselves and love our family more than we love Wells Fargo. So those are three characteristics I have in an upfront discussion with most of my clients. Is that something similar that you see in your clients as well?
My clients are on what I call the second mountain. So let's say that the first mountain is egoic, right? We want, when you're young, you listen to your parents, you get a good education, get a good job, and you start climbing that first mountain. You want to get the nice cars, the nice house, and go on the beautiful vacations. And then you climb that mountain, you get up to that first mountain, next thing you know, it's empty. And so you go to the second mountain. And the second mountain is about purpose, and it's about community, and it's about faith, and it's about love and intimacy. And it's a harder mountain to climb, but it's a way more fulfilling mountain to climb. And so when you're talking about that second mountain, that's what our clients want, is they want the time freedom and the money freedom to live their best lives, move up Maslow's hierarchy of needs into self-actualization. And so people that are drawn to the infinite banking concept, those are people that are thinking about being a great ancestor and about building something bigger than themselves. And they tend to be attracted to this model as well because, let's face it, life is very short and we want to make it the best of it. And so if you can transfer your values and also have a monthly check going to your family that outlives you, what a beautiful legacy to pass on.
Yeah, that's so true. My 4 founding principles, and again, people that listen to the podcast, I probably could recite them for you, but I'll share with them is let's think long term. That was something that Nelson talked about in his book. And being my mentor, that was one of the things that you have to be a long-term thinker. The next one is people have this knowledge. God has put into all of us the knowledge that we need to be successful in life. But the problem is it's kind of like a garden, right? You have all these weeds that are growing up around your flowers or your fruits or your vegetables, whatever you're trying to grow. And you need somebody, and this is the third principle, is to empower you or empower my clients to get rid of those weeds so we can grow and nurture the thing that we want to grow and nurture. And I don't want to be I always tell people, I don't want to be that gatekeeper. I want to be that person that empowers you to do that so you can pass on that legacy, which is the fourth leg of that stool, is that we want to be that, like you said, we want to be that person that has left that legacy of empowerment and knowledge and money to help people reach those freedoms of time, money, relationship, and purpose. So it seems like we're right in the line. It's fun, interesting and fun having this conversation, but it's just amazing that there's so many people that are wanting and able to hear that message that it's your clients and my clients, and we can bring them together possibly and see if they can be of service. We can be of service to each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
So clients go through that, and again, they're climbing that second mountain. And I like that analogy. I hadn't really thought about that before, is that people are looking for that freedom of purpose and relationship, time and money, which, again, some people think, oh, I got all the money in the world. It was funny. We were just having this conversation because we're the Mega Millions lottery. When this airs, somebody's going to probably have already won the Mega Millions lottery. But we're having a discussion around our dinner table, and I was asking my family, I said, if you won $500 million, what would you do with it? And it was interesting because a lot of the things that we would want to do something to help people or homeless or veterans. And I'm like, and I was probably because I knew we were having this conversation coming up, I said, I would want to find a way to have this thing be perpetual. Let's buy some sort of real estate that can generate income that can serve those grandiose ideas that we want to do to help people. And that leads into right to what you were saying, right?
No, absolutely. And that's such an enlightened way of thinking and such a long-term way of thinking that I think if you lined up 100 families and said you inherited $500 million, the first thing they would say is, I want to get the new house. I'm going to get a bunch of cars.
Right.
Or we're going to travel the world. I'm going to get a private jet. And they're going to think about all the possessions that they could have and all the crazy exotic experiences. They're not going to think, oh, maybe I should buy some cash flowing assets and that could fund all the things that I want to do in life, as well as leave a tremendous legacy and serve as many people as I can. I'm still alive. And beyond me. Yeah. So it's
beyond. I was just going to say into the next generations, right?
To the next generation. So it's like this generational value of serving and making the world a better place.
And it's so important. I think some people might say, what does this have to do with buying raw land? But I think it's more important to make sure that we have the same set of values that we're working with, right? So those people that are working with me typically are in line with my values. And it seemed like if they would be in line with my values, they're right in line with what your value system is as well, because that's ultimately what it comes down to, is that relationship between our businesses and the fact that we want to work with people that have our best interest and our values at heart.
Yeah. And the beautiful thing about raw land, you want to talk about a legacy investment, it's the only thing that lasts. It can't be destroyed. Think about it, like a building one day will come down.
Yeah.
Everything in your life will eventually go away. Even styrofoam at some point decomposes, and that stuff lasts forever. Almost
Plastic
forever.
Eggs, styrofoam, the cockroaches.
Yeah, I mean, even that, right? But land is the only thing that lasts.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that way from a long-term perspective. So with that, what does a client look like here? What's a typical client look like? Maybe you don't have a typical client, but what do you see if you have reaching out to listeners like, They might go, oh, this isn't for me, or I don't get this, or I don't understand, I don't have enough money, or whatever it is. Maybe talk through that real quick with me.
I think my typical client wants to solve their money and their time problems. That's my typical client. But the value is their second mountain people usually. Right. I don't attract the Grant Cardone, testosterone-fueled men in their 20s that want to make $1 million a year and live this hedonistic lifestyle that they see on social media. That's not my typical client. So my typical client is more, they were in that first mountain and now they're ready for that second mountain. And they want the model of buying and selling raw land and making it cash flow and not having the headaches to solve their time and money problems so they can create that legacy and spend even more time with their family, spend even more time donating to charity and their favorite causes and do those things.
So do they have to be an accredited investor to work with you, Mark?
They don't have to be, but it's a good idea to be.
Gotcha. Okay.
At least if done for you, it is. Now, done with you and do it yourself, you don't have to be. But if you're going to work, if it's going to be done for you, you want to have substantial capital to start.
Right. So what are some of the economic conditions? Are there worries that you have going through that? Obviously, the price of land is going up and down all the time. What would be like a downside risk that I would want to be made aware of if you had to pick one or two things?
The biggest risk is not knowing what you're doing.
Right.
That's the biggest risk. So if you listen to this podcast and then you think, oh, I'm going to do exactly what he said to do, you need to go deeper and you need to be more educated. And it's not to say there's not tons of free information out there. There is, but you want to get educated. I think that's the biggest risk. Even if you're saying, oh, what about in environmental? You can go to EPA.gov during your due diligence and make sure you're not buying what we call a Superfund site, which is where the manufacturing companies literally destroy the land environmentally. And you are now responsible for that multi-million-dollar cleanup if you don't know what you're doing. So there are some things in due diligence that you want to be made aware of, and there's always ways to mitigate it. But otherwise, it's a pretty simple model. It's just like anything else. It's not easy, but it's simple.
So that actually leads into one of the other questions I had, because I hear this all the time. I was talking with a client and he introduced me to somebody that really loved this thought of controlling the banking function in your life. He asked this question. He said, what are the first three things I need to do to get started? I'm like, that's a great question. I said, you read Nelson's book, right? You got to understand the concept. And in there, he talks about, he has a grocery story where he talks about you have to be educated in your space, right? Understand and read Nelson's book, get educated, take control of your spending and understand who you are and what dollars you have to go. And then what's your have a long-term plan. I said, those are probably your first three steps. And so for you, if somebody says, hey, what's the first three steps I have to take? It's all like number one is get yourself educated.
Absolutely.
Is there books, or obviously on your website, maybe there's some additional information on the landgeeks.com, but would you say there's a couple other steps that you have to go through before you really can say, okay, now I'm ready to take the next step and have these conversations with Mark?
This is a shameless plug, but there's a guy that's been doing this for over 22 years that wrote a book called Dirt Rich. And
oh yeah, I love that.
Lays out the whole model for you. So You could do that. You could go on YouTube and Google land investing. There's all types of free videos there. I have a free course, how to double your money, 30 days or less, thelandgeek.com/quick deals, because I do think the best way to learn anything is by doing it. And so This will guide you on how to do it. So yeah, I think that's important.
Yeah, I would agree. So this kind of goes back to, I think we learn a lot by things that we maybe didn't do the best, or when we first got started, we learned probably the greatest lessons by our failures. I hate to use the word failures because that sounds so negative, but I also believe if we're not failing forward, we're not pushing the envelope. I look at when I started my policy, when I got into independent banking, one of I call my greatest failures, and I had the inability to think. I was thinking very small, thinking very scarcity mindset. And so it took me a number of years to get over that hump. And I look back and like, man, I don't want to say I wasted that time because I learned a lot in that time, but that was one of those things that I say, if I could go back and redo, I would have done differently. But then maybe I want to learn what I should have learned. Is there anything in your life, in your experience, that you say, hey, this is something I wish I'd have done better at the beginning?
There's so many things I wish I had done better in the beginning.
The biggest thing, how's that?
The biggest thing, I would say that for years, I just flipped land for cash and not cash flow. That was a huge mistake.
Oh,
huge
interesting.
Mistake.
So you flip land for cash, but not cash flow.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of people that would buy into that. And what sparked that? Hey, I need to have this thing for cash flow. You're just tired of finding and selling and flipping.
Yeah. I had a mentor that looked at my business. He's like, man, you're just starting from scratch every time you do a deal. Nobody wants a lumpy business. You want a consistent business. And so that monthly recurring revenue or that mailbox money, that it's hard to even put a number on it. Where, then you got to pay taxes and you have to do it again. And you're constantly living in the state of insecurity. House flippers feel that way. Wholesalers feel that way. You're only as good as your next deal. Where when you have consistent cash flow, you can ride out market cycles, and you can really, just like a doctor or lawyer, they can look at their cash flow and say, okay, for the next 20 years, this is reasonably what my income is going to be. You can start reverse engineering and say, okay, this is how much I should save, this is how much can spend, and how can I invest? And it's just easier as far as planning.
If people take away one point, I think that's the point, right? Don't get away from selling for cash, but find cash flow. I talk about it all the time, but your point is so strong, and it's hitting the nail on the head right there. It's like you're starting over every time, and it's lumpy. I love the word. You got a lumpy, and you got the ups and the downs, and how do you smooth that out? And man, that's a huge point. I think people didn't hear what you said. I'd say go back and rewind that, because that was so powerful, because it is about a consistent cash flow. Really, with what downside risk? You end up with the land back if they don't make the payment, and you go resell it again and do it over again.
Exactly. And we use a land contract and not a deed of trust, so there's no cost of foreclosure.
Oh yeah. So in essence, what you're doing is what a lot of the farmers in my neck of the woods used to do, is to contract for deed, sell it to the next generation, and so much down so they get their upfront cash, and then the next 10 years they have cash that's being generated for their retirement income or whatever they needed it for.
Exactly.
Wow. And then I got a story of a guy that did that 3 times on a piece of property because the guy couldn't make his payment. So he ended up giving the land back, and so he went and sold it again and got the down payment, and they did a contract for deed, and same thing happened. And the 3rd time he finally got it sold completely. He says that was actually the best piece of land he ever had, because he was able to sell it 3 times.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not that's what you
not that
want.
that's the goal, but it is a fact of life, and it just extends up your return on investment.
Yeah. So I like to ask this question. If this is so great, because this is what gets asked about IVC all the time, right? If this is so great, why doesn't everybody do it?
First of all, you're not going to go on HGTV or the DIY network and see flip this land. The before picture is raw land. The after picture is raw land. That's the first thing. And the second thing is, if we reverse that question, it's like, why would I even teach this? Because aren't I creating my own competition? And this is actually what my wife asked too when I started teaching it. So I put on my investment banker hat. And so let's look at the size of the market. There are billions of acres of land available just in the United States. You, me, 1 million people could be in this niche. We'll all run out of money before we run out of deal flow. Big money in this niche. There's no private equity groups. There's no hedge funds. And so it's just, if you have that abundance mentality, there's enough for everybody. But I think that's really the definitive answer, is that number one, it's boring. And number two, there's enough for everybody.
I think that goes right along with IBC. I get that question all the time, and I'm like, why does everybody do this if it's so great? I was like, one is, it is like in Nelson's book, right in the introduction, he says, this isn't a get-rich-quick scheme. It's not something you guys throw on the water cooler and talk about. It's a long-term process of controlling the banking function in your life, right? And the second one is lack of education and conditioned thinking. There's so many people out there that have been conditioned to think there's only one way to make wealth. That's sticking money into Wall Street instead of finding a place that's on your street to buy land.
Absolutely. There is that sense. And I don't think I even grew up this way. I don't know if you grew up this way, Wade. I think we all grow up where this other party is taking care of us. There's a custodian in every part of our lives. And now somebody's saying, oh, no, you'd be responsible for it. And if you're not used to that, it's scary. And so to have that sort of self-empowerment to take total control of your finances is scary in some part. And it's hard to look in the mirror and say, if this goes bad, this is on me. I can't blame it on anybody else. And it's just having that mindset. But obviously what the reality is, if you want to do great things in life, you have to take full responsibility.
100% agree. One of the questions I had, and you really just answered that, is how important is it to control the banking function in your life, your clients' lives, to be able to do this? And to your point, it's your responsibility, right? You're providing the tools and the knowledge, and it's their responsibility to understand and have the discipline to do it correctly.
Yeah, absolutely. But there is that piece where you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable and get over that fear at some point. And it's just with anything in life worth doing, whether it's setting up an IBC policy, starting a new business, making an investment. At some point, you got to write the check.
That's 100% true. Well, probably my last question. Again, thanks so much for taking the time. I've taken so much from this conversation. Hopefully the listeners can take as much as I have. It makes me super excited to go out to the landgeeks.com. I'm going to do some reading. I'm going to read your book. I haven't read Dirt Rich yet. I apologize for that. So again, thank you for taking the time. So one last parting question is, I like to ask everybody this question is, besides Dirt Rich, what's one of your favorite books that you've read, and or what is your current book that you're reading that you really say, hey, everybody, and it doesn't have to do with any topic we talked about, but it's really making a difference in your life right now?
So I'm a huge reader. All right. 3 books that I'm really, okay. I'll give you the book that I'm reading right now that I love is Think Again by Adam Grant and Falling Upward by Richard Rohr are great. Now, if Richard Rohr's, if that kind of faith-based writing is a turnoff for you, I would read David Brooks's Second Mountain. It'll be a little bit more palatable. But Think Again is great. And then 2 books that I think in combination can be transformative is going to be The One Thing by Gary Keller combined with The 12-Week Year by Brian Moran. If you really understand those 2 books, you can just go big.
I apologize. I interrupted you. What was that second book you mentioned?
The 12-Week Year.
The 12-week year.
Yeah. So the premise being that annual goals, and they really start building intensity around the end of the year. Everyone doesn't really think about it. But if you have a 12-week year, then every quarter is your year. So every day is a week, every week is a month, and there's a built-in intensity on what you're getting done every single day.
Fabulous. That's great advice. Those are great books. I've read The One Thing and I absolutely love it, but I haven't read The 12-Week Year. So, and The Second Mountain, I'm excited to, I've never heard of that one, so I'm excited to read that as well. So I like your thought process that people are going to The Second Mountain because it's a much bigger and broader picture, right? It's that you kind of get out of your own little world and now you're starting to do bigger and better things because you let your imagination run. You're finding that freedom to do all these other things. So I love that idea of that second mountain.
Yeah, absolutely. And Adam Grant, Think Again was great. I love it. Anything Adam Grant writes is great. Him and Simon Sinek are great thought.
Yes. I love Simon Sinek's books as well. I haven't read Adam Grant stuff. There's so many good stuff out there. So thanks for sharing. I think people, if you have a book that you recommend you read, they get a lot of more insight to what you believe in and what you understand. So it's a lot easier to have that relationship and do business. Somebody that has the same thought process as you have.
Yeah, absolutely.
So any last parting shots, advice, commercial? I just want to say thank you for your time. I look forward to having future conversations with you because this has been so invigorating for me. But any other kind of parting shots that you'd like to throw out there, or just words of advice or anything else you'd like to share?
Yeah, I love this quote from Zig Ziglar. If you'll do for the next 3 to 5 years what other people won't do, you'll be able to do it for the rest of your life what other people can't do.
That's fabulous, man. That's fabulous. If you do over the next 3 to 5 years what other people won't do, then for the rest of your life you'll be able to do what they're not able to. Probably
what other people can't do.
What other people can't do. That's good stuff right there. Zig is the master. I love Zig Ziglar stuff.
Isn't he great?
Yeah. Well, again, thank you so much. I appreciated your time. I appreciate your insight. Again, those that are listening, go to landgeek.com, educate yourself. Read Mark's book, Dirt, and then take a look at this to see if this is something that could be beneficial to you. And then engage with Mark. You'll pick up the phone if they call or they email. You'll get back to them.
Yeah, we'll schedule a call on my calendar. Absolutely.
Perfect. Again, thanks so much. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Wade.
If you're enjoying this podcast or know anyone else that might be interested, please be sure to hit the subscribe button and please leave a review. This will help this podcast reach and help more people by ranking higher in searches, and ultimately help more people get out of financial bondage. And don't be afraid to share this podcast with your friends and family, as we can be easily found on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.